everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney, and today we have part 1 of our Huxley Bag Sew Along. So we're going to be doing a backpack purse, backpack bag, whatever you want to call it. Huxley pattern. I will leave a link down, or a code down below if you still haven't gotten your pattern and you're interested in sewing along. It's good through the end of the Great Module Sew Along Challenge, which is the end of March 2020, depending on when you're watching this. But yeah, I've got a code down below that I will put in the description box. So if you would like 20% off the pattern, you can definitely get it then. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the supplies that we need, and then we're going to be cutting out our bag. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm not entirely sure how many parts this is going to break out into. Again, you're watching this, I mean, not live, but I'm sewing as much or doing as much as you're seeing in this video, and then I'm usually taking a bit of a break until you see the next video. So you're seeing me do this all kind of on the fly. I've never sewn this pattern before. I hope I do it justice for this pattern, but anyway, let's get talking about tools. So if you've got the pattern, it's actually fairly easy as considering bags, because there is a hardware kit that is available through the website, the Pattern Goheen Designs website. If you're interested, it's just a really great way to get everything in kind of in one fell swoop. And there's different options. You don't have to buy the tools with the hardware. So if you already have a punch press, already have the little anvil or whatever, you can buy different levels of the hardware kit depending on what you need. So if you're making a second Huxley, for instance, and you already have the tools, you don't need them a second time. So you could just order, just the hardware bits that you need for that bag. I also want to talk, there are two views of this pattern. I'll pop line drawings up, view A and view B. View A has the flap that goes on the back, and view B just has the zipper top at the top. I'm going to be making view A. I love the flap on the top. Madeline, the pattern designer, we're friends in real life. She's part of my professional sewing organization, our local chapter, and she carries the Huxley all the time. She's a somewhat new mom. Her little boy is not 2 yet. But anyway, she, I think, used it kind of as a diaper bag as well. I'm pretty sure hers is the larger size. So you've got a larger size and a smaller size for both views A and B. And they're two different files to print off. I'm making the smaller size just because I want mine just to be for a purse. There is a technology bag for the back, and I think in the pattern it says that the larger size will fit a 13-inch laptop into that technology bag, whereas the smaller one you could put like a tablet in. I'm not sure if that's like an iPad size or like a mini iPad. Anyway. I don't carry that stuff with me very often. Although, I might make, I've got actually a lot of leather, just from bits and bobs, and then also thrifted leather as well. So let's get into what we'll need. First things first, this pattern, calls for, let's see, I'm trying to find here, she talks about the leather that you can, she calls it the leather, but you don't have to use leather for the body of the bag. You can, which I'm going to be actually using leather, but you can use faux leather, vinyl. You can use upholstery vinyl, marine vinyl, boiled wool, sturdy felt, or cork. Basically, nice, hefty fabrics that don't fray. Now, you can use, and she does talk about, you can use some materials that do fray, but on the straps specifically, you'll need to add seam allowances onto the side so that you can tuck those in, because those do get top stitched to the webbing to create stronger handles and straps and that kind of thing. So I think, but she talks about that. There's a lot that she talks about here. You could also use, yeah, she says you can definitely sew this bag with other materials, but just beware of the stiffness, because leather and vinyl tend to have some structure, so you're going to want something that has some structure, and beware of the raw edges. So this pattern calls for the raw edges of the leather to show on the straps of the bag. If you don't want the raw edges of your material to show, if it's going to fray, you can either add seam allowances to the edge of the strap pieces so you can turn under the edges, or you can leave your straps uncovered and just let the webbing show, which there's some really, really adorable webbing colors out there that, you could just let the webbing out, and I think that would be fantastic as well. So that's the only issue, would be on the straps having raw edges that fray like crazy. Other than that, just something nice and sturdy. Because she says, you could use canvas, duck cloth, waxed canvas. outdoor upholstery fabric, bottom weight wovens, just anything with some nice structure to it. All right, so for my bag, I have chosen my dear, dear friend Jenny, who you guys have all met, my thrifting buddy, was waiting for her daughter to finish her music competition and was at a Goodwill and sent me a text of this red leather skirt. Hold on, I'm hooked on my lining fabric. And it is literally, it's my red. It is that red orange that goes perfectly in my module. This is a woman's size 16 skirt and it was a long length. So all I've done is I have cut up the back of it. The seam, the back seam, and cut the zipper out, and I cut the lining out. Although I kept, it's an old skirt. I can tell by the tag, but I've kept the tag, and I'm thinking of sewing the tag from the skirt into the lining of the bag somewhere just for fun, because just to give it a nod to what it was in its former life. So I have laid out my pattern pieces. Now I'm gonna have some seams on some of the parts of my bag, so I'm gonna need to make sure that I line up. I'm gonna treat it as a stripe, basically. Make sure that I line that up appropriately when I'm cutting out. And there are a couple of spots on this skirt, so I also am making note of that when I cut my pieces out. But I noticed that I can't quite get everything. Really the only thing that I can't get out of this red, throw that on the ground, is the flap that I'm doing for view A. You have to cut 2 of leather on this. Everything else, and this lays out, I can get 1, but not 2. So I decided not to just make it red. I'm going to add some of this. I bought this little, I don't know, offcut, this hide offcut. There's a leather shop. We go down to Nashville, Indiana, not Tennessee. Nashville, Indiana, which is in Brown County. Gorgeous. It's a very touristy area. It's got like a arts and craftsman type area. There's like, you know, I don't know, a lot of artisans, you know, ceramics. There's a little yarn shop down there, and there's a quilting shop that's down there. Anyway, they have a leather goods store where you can buy leather as well. And I think I bought that from here, but this is my brown. You know, it's a warmer brown, and I'm going to use it with the red. So I've decided that I'm going to cut the underside of the flap in this brown, but I need to bring it in other places as well. And I also think, I haven't bought my top stitching thread yet, but I think I'm gonna use this color for my top stitching thread. I think that'll look nice on the red and also kind of bring everything together. I think on some of my straps, I'm gonna use this, this leather. And maybe there's a back pocket on the back of this. I might use it for the back pocket. I haven't decided yet. I don't know that I want a lot of brown on it, because this will be the under part of the flap, so you won't see it a lot. So I may just do the under part of the flap, and then maybe some of the straps that are on the front of the bag, since the top stitching thread's gonna be this color. Anyway, still pondering that, but I did have, and this leather is actually a little thicker than my red, so I don't wanna do too much of the big parts of the bag, because I don't want my layers to get super, super thick. Oh, it smells so good. I love the smell of leather. Anyway, so that's what I've decided to do. So I'm using a thrifted skirt that I paid, or Jenny paid for $4.50 for. And then I think I got that little scrap for under 10 bucks. You can usually get some of the offcuts and stuff for a pretty good price at that little leather shop down there. So that is my main material I'll be using. And then for lining, it's basically just, you know, heavy duty. I'm trying to see if it says on here. For fabric, oh, she goes into all the different dimensions for the 2 different bags. Well, I'm sure it's on here, but basically what you would normally use for like bag lining. Quilting cottons are always a good choice. So I've decided to use this quilting cotton that I have in my stash. Isn't that fun? Now it is a cream base, it might get dirty, but you know, for the inside of the bag, I don't know that I care. And I think I bought this. This is a designer. What is this one? Is this a... Oh yeah, cotton and steel. So this, I thought it was. So this is a cotton and steel fabric. And I think I bought it down in the Hamilton, Missouri, which is where Missouri Star Quilt is. My in-laws live in a town very, very close to there. So we pop over there every now and again. I don't sew with quilting cottons a lot, but I think I bought this a long time ago with the thought of making my daughter a dress. And then I just never did. And now she's 13 and doesn't want a dress out of quilting cotton. So I'll I'm gonna use it for the lining of my bag. Okay, then it talks about, let's see, what else do we need? We need some heavy duty thread, and she actually has a recommendation in here for, let's see, just any kind of, well, she says the Coates & Clark dual duty heavy, which is what I'm going to use. I don't have my color at the moment. I need to make a run to Joann's to get that, or a nylon bonded thread. So you just want to make, she does say, you size up on your needle if you're using a thicker thread, otherwise you'll get skip stitches. I am going to have enough leather, I think, to be able to do some test strips to play around with my size. So we are going to use a leather needle. And I would recommend, especially if you're using thicker thread, to maybe size up to like a size 18, a 16 or an 18 leather needle. Definitely, I wouldn't go smaller than a 16. Of course, it does determine, I mean, it depends on how thick your fabric is as well. My red isn't super thick, but the brown is a little bit thicker. But I'm gonna use, I think I've got, 16 might be the largest I've got in a leather needle, but I'm gonna use my largest size. Sometimes my industrial does not play well with thicker thread, so I am gonna have to play around with that because I would rather not have to do the top stitching on my home machine. Oddly enough, if I'm making jeans, I always thread, I'm sure it's playing around with the tension on my industrial that would make it easier to use thicker thread on the top, like a top stitching thread. I just don't want to mess around with that because I don't very often use that kind of thread, and when I'm making jeans, I usually just use my home machine because that one accommodates the thicker thread a little bit better. Now, again, I'm usually using jean, like top stitching, like the really thick jean top stitching thread for that purpose. This is not going to be that thick. So I want it somewhat thick so that we can see it, but we don't need as thick as like a jean top stitching thread, for instance. Okay, so we also need the hardware, and again, I bought the hardware kit, but let's see, you need a 1.5 inch, you need two 1.5 inch circle rings, 22 rivets, two swivel lobster claws, two strap adjusters, pair of 7 pairs of snaps, two 1-inch D-rings, two 1-inch rectangular rings, and she says you could use 1-inch D-rings instead of the rectangular rings, and then a zipper if you're doing VB, which I'm not. So all of that comes, and again, this is what I got for, oh, there's the tag that came from my skirt. I'll take it off the lining, but there's the tag. I got this for Christmas from my brother-in-law, but I got the complete kit. So it came with all the tools, the rivet setters, the snap setters, the little anvil, little circle anvil there. And then here are all of the hardware pieces that I need. And then it also came with the Rotary hole punch, which I actually think, I have a funny story about this. So it came with this, which I think is great for bag making and poking holes in leather. However, some of my followers, I had talked about this tool before, and some of you that work with leather quite often said, you know, actually the single sets that, you know, the little rivet punches that are a single thing that you hit with a hammer are better. And so my brother-in-law is big into tools, like heavy machinery, like he goes to estate sales and buys things that you need a forklift to like move. When they move house, it's going to be ridiculous. I mean, they're going to have to hire like, I don't know, like an industrial moving team. I don't know. They may never move house just for that reason. But he is big into tools. And when I asked for this hardware kit for Christmas, you would have thought, I mean, he was so excited. So since then, and since he knows I'm using like for real tools, because he has like a press, like from a factory, like it weighs like a couple of tons, that he has dies. He's like, oh my gosh, if you want any dies, we can cut leather out like, you know, like that. It was used for shoemaking, actually, to cutting out pattern pieces for shoemaking originally. But he sent me a whole little care package of a whole bunch of things that he's just collected from various estate sales, eBay, that kind of thing, that are the leather. And he even got me a little brass hammer if I'm gonna be doing a lot of leather work. So bless his sweetheart. It's my husband's brother, just so sweet. But he was just very concerned that the tools that I had ordered would not allow me to do heavy duty leather work, which I'm like, well, I don't know that I'm gonna be doing heavy duty leather work, but it was really cute. So anyway, again, you can order that all from her just to make your life a little bit easier. All right, next thing you need, so that's all in the things that you need, heavy duty thread and then webbing. She has a link to an Etsy shop that has a whole bunch of different colors of just the cotton nylon webbing that you see everywhere, and you can buy this at Joann's. Now, I'm pretty sure, I'll leave a link down below to the Etsy shop. Again, a whole bunch of colors. I went with this kind of light tan. Kind of wish I'd gotten for the dark brown, but that's okay. She sells them in 4-yard bundles. I needed 2 because you need actually 2.5 or 4.5 yards for this project. So I went ahead and ordered 2 bundles. I don't know what I'll do with the rest of it. It'd actually make a really cute belt. But anyway, I think she only ships to the US. So I'm sure if you searched on Etsy, you could find other 1-inch wide webbing that would ship worldwide, or that might be from your country that would ship, because it's not all that hard to find. But anyway, I have webbing here for my straps. All right, then the last little bit, I printed off my pattern, and she suggests this in the pattern, and I think it's genius. So you have a whole bunch of these little dots where rivets are gonna go. Drill holes, basically. It's where you will eventually punch a hole in your leather. And she recommends poking a hole in your pattern so you can very easily mark it onto your pattern but don't do the hole yet, because she also says, you know, as you're making your bag for personal preference, or if things just kind of shift, you may want to move your holes. And once you punched a hole in the leather, it's there for good. So she suggests just marking them. But she did say it just makes it a lot easier if you poke a hole in those. So I just took my little awl and poked holes, which you could do it with, I mean, anything sharp. Poke holes in the paper so I can easily get my pen in there when I'm gonna actually trace all these pattern pieces onto my leather with a Sharpie on the back and then cut it out. So I'm not worried about things shifting. And I can make sure my lines, because I'm kind of working with a pattern with my seam lines. But yeah, she suggested doing that. And then on some of these where you've got like a little box, I just took my rotary cutter and just cut out those boxes, because then it's really easy to mark with chalk onto the back, or pen onto the back of your pattern. If you're marking it on the front, you definitely obviously want to use chalk. You don't want to mark with pen on the front of the leather. But yeah, so I've done that to all of my pattern pieces. And I thought that was a great idea, especially with working on leather. Okay, I think that's it. That's all the supplies that we need. So now I'm gonna take you over to the cutting table, and we are gonna cut out all of our pieces. Another thing that she suggested was there's like a million of these little strap pieces that are all labeled, you know, like piece Q, whatever. And also on here, I'm gonna have my computer near me, because she also has a chart on here that shows you what you should be cutting out, the pattern piece and your webbing. So it's, you know, it'll tell you piece A, you need to cut that out of its lining, and you need to cut 2. I mean, it says it on the pattern piece too, but you can just go through for your view and pick out what you need. And then it also, when you get down here to the straps, tells you what length of webbing you need to cut to coincide with those strap pieces. And then she suggests wrapping it with like painter's tape and then writing the letter of the pattern piece on there so that you don't lose, you know, things don't get separated from one another. So I'm gonna do that as well. Okay, let's go cut out. And then that's all we're doing for this week. And then next week we will start sewing. So that's very exciting. Okay, I will see you guys on Tuesday. And yeah, have a good rest of your weekend. Bye. All right, so here we've got all of our stuff laid out. We've got the lining pattern pieces over here. There's the lining I'm gonna be using. This is the hardware kit that I purchased from Goheen Designs. And then these here, let's see, one of these has to be cut in leather and in lining as well. I think it's the back pocket. I think it's this piece right there. And then a whole bunch of straps, and then the little bitty pieces. So I'm very hopeful. Back here I've got the red leather skirt, and I've just cut up the back seam. Obviously there'll be seams in my pieces because the skirt is pieced, as most leather pieces are. I'm really hopeful though I can get all of it out of this. But if I can't, I do have a little piece of this brown, and I do like the way those go together. So I'm just going to kind of lay out my pattern pieces, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that here in a minute to see if I can fit it all in the red. But if I can't, I'm going to get creative and also mix in some of this brown. And then lastly, I've got my webbing that's right up here. And I've got more than I need. I ordered 2 batches of the 4 yards because technically you need 4.5. So yeah, we are all ready to cut out and then sew our backpacks. I'm so excited. Okay, so I've got all of my pieces here and they're all ready to go. And like I said, I'm going to trace these out on my leather. I've kind of pinpointed some of the leather that's has a little marks on it and stuff, because again, this was a garment, it was worn. So I know, like my flap, for instance, I picked kind of the best piece of the leather, which is actually this quadrant right here that I'm going to use for that. I've got my lining pieces that are probably just out of frame over here. We'll cut that out in a minute. And I've got my brown leather over here. And I think all of my straps, I think possibly, are going to be cut out of the brown, in addition to the back part of the flap. Yeah. I want it to look cohesive. I don't want it to look like, oh, these are just random straps, but I think they're going to be on the front of the bags, and the top stitching is going to be that color, so I think it's going to work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, again, I've got seams here, so I'm using those as like a pattern, kind of. So I want one of these seams to go right down the center of this piece here. So I am just going to set these pieces onto the leather. Some of these seams I got to kind of move out of the way. I'm going to do a time lapse, but I'm basically just going to set it down, weight it with pattern weights, and then trace it out. And I'm going to trace everything out on the skirt first before I cut, and I'm on the back side. And all I did was cut up the center back seam of this skirt. I removed the lining and took out the zipper. And that's been it. So we are kind of thrifting. It's what I do. Okay, so I'm just gonna time lapse, play some music, and yeah, get this cut out, or traced and then cut out. I'm using a Sharpie. I have everything traced, and as you see, I changed the orientation of my front flap because of my seams. So I'm going to have vertical or horizontal seams going across my bag in places, and I also marked especially the back bottom piece and the front bottom piece. I want that stripe to kind of match up all the way around, and I was able to do that. I'm going to have some scraps, but that's going to be good because I'm going to use the brown, hopefully, for everything else, and then we will cut out the lining fabric. I also want to point out, make sure you're marking your notches. You're gonna, you can go through and actually clip into those, and she recommends that. There's no grain on leather or vinyl, so if you are sewing with either of those, you can put pieces however you want. They can go on because there's no grain line. Yeah, I'm going to use a rotary cutter, especially these straps, because that's going to be a raw edge. But I also just find rotary cutters to be much easier. I am going to use my scissors to clip my notches. And then all of my markings and stuff are already on there. A lot of those might have to be transferred to the front, but if they do, I'm actually just going to use a chalk to do that. Yeah, I think just the boxes will have to be transferred to the front, because I think I can make the holes from the back. because that's what those will be for rivets. So anyway, okay, I'm gonna cut this out now with my rotary cutter. It will dull your blade. I have an old blade on here, so I'll just get rid of it when I'm done with this. So we're gonna cut out our leather, put it with the pieces. There's a couple of pieces that had to be, or one, I guess, that had to be cut in both leather and lining. And then one piece that needs to be cut in the 2 different leathers. So yeah, we'll do this leather first and then the second leather. Yeah, so I'm just gonna cut that out real quick. Another note though, I've used Sharpie to trace this. So that is obviously a thick line, which I'm fine with. I can kind of ride the Sharpie along the pattern paper. But when you're cutting it out, cut inside that black line so you're not making the pattern bigger than what it is. Because every, 1/8 of an inch can start adding up after a while. So basically I'm cutting that black line off. That's why you want to mark your notches now. Okay, there we have our red leather. Now I've got some sizable scraps here that I can use for testing and or maybe for some of the straps, depending on how much of this brown that I'm able to use. So I'm just gonna cut off the straggly bits here. Okay. So now these are going to go over into the scrap bin for now. And we'll see how we get on. So now I'm going to do the same thing with, just set that back there. Same thing with the brown leather. Again, like I mentioned, this is a little thicker than the red. That's okay. And I was playing around with this last night, and the longest strap here, of which I need 2 of, we gotta go diagonally across here, which is absolutely fine because leather has no grain. And then I think I can fit that in very tidily there. And then I can just do all of these other little bitty straps and bits and pieces. Again, because I'm drawing this out, I can use the straight edge. You know what I mean? Like they can just be like stacked upon one another all the way out to the edge. So these are the 2 big pieces that I have to make fit. And then all of these little strap pile here, I'm gonna just make it work. So again, if I need to use some of the red, I can. Want to be somewhat thoughtful about that. But I'm just going to do the same thing I just did. I'm going to trace it out and then I'm going to cut it out. And again, I like to use a thick Sharpie. I cut inside the line, so I'm basically cutting the Sharpie line off when I cut it out. But I can really ride a large Sharpie along the edge of this paper and get a real smooth line, which is why I like doing it. Actually, as I get ready to trace out these long straps, I'm gonna get a ruler just so I can really make sure they're straight, because that's all they are long 1-inch wide strips of leather. So I'm gonna get a ruler and really make sure, a flat edge, to make sure I'm really tracing those correctly. I will still need the pattern piece though to mark my rivet holes, so don't forget that. Okay, so I cut out some of them, cutting out these strips because it got very tedious. So now I'm going to go to the computer here and I'm going to cut my webbing out. She has a nice little chart here that tells you exactly what you need for each piece. Right now I have my little pattern pieces on top, but I'm actually going to go through and cut, and then I'm going to tape my pieces together, write the pattern number on them, and then set the pattern piece on top. So I'm just going to do that real quick, and then we'll get on to the lining. Okay, and as I'm making a pile of all these straps, that was tedious, I can definitely see where labeling them with tape is beneficial. So, definitely recommend that. Okay, now I am going to just get reset up here with my lining fabric, and then we will cut that out. Alright, so now I've switched to my lining fabric. Most of these just need to be cut one. I've got a piece of leather here because this also has to get cut out in lining. The only thing, let's see, piece A has to be cut 2 in your lining fabric. These other 2 pieces, you just need to cut 1, and this piece as well just needs 1 in the lining and 1 in the main body. So I have this folded on itself, so I'm gonna cut this 2 out first. Again, I've made all points where my points on my pattern are, and I've switched to my friction pin. So I'm just gonna, I may be out of frame a little bit while I cut out here at the top, but now I'm just gonna cut these pieces out real quick. Okay guys, there we have it. Our bag is all cut out and now we can start sewing. So yeah, get this far along on your bags and we'll see you next week when we go to the machine and start sewing. Bye!